Hi, Aniruddha here. Today we are going to discuss one very important aspect of the React project, that is a global state management. So whenever you say global state management, you might be knowing why we are using that, and you might not be knowing why we are using that. So whenever you talk about the global state management, remember that it's a common data which is required throughout the application. Well, there are a lot of techniques to do that, but today I am going to use one of the more prominently used library, that is nothing but what the Redux is. How do you use a Redux in your project? That we are going to see. Lot of things we are going to discuss over here, right? And remember that Redux is a third party state management library. This is not the official version of the React. Well, you can do state management in the React by means of the different ways. So one of the very basic way is that props. I hope you are familiar with the React. I hope you are familiar with the React, and whatever terms I am using over here, you are aware of that. Context management, context API. So you can do the state management in the React by means of, you can say, these two things. And one more thing I would like to add, that is use reducers. This is one of the hook, remember that. For the context API, we use one of the hook called as use context, right? Use context, create context. Use context, create context. So these are the official techniques, or these are the native techniques of managing the state in the React. Official, which means that whenever you install a React, these things will come along with them. But other than that, you need to do lot of things where there are a lot of scenarios where these things are not sufficient, like asynchronous calls. Well, you can achieve it, whatever you are going to achieve by means of the Redux. All that things you can achieve over here, right, using all these things. But still there are some scenarios where you need to go with a Redux only. We will discuss those scenarios in the next video. So intention of this video is to tell you the implementation of the Redux. So how exactly you would be implementing Redux in your React project? This is what we are going to see in this video. Now, once you are familiar with the terms of the Redux, then we will go with something called as comparison. So first I would be implementing the Redux, then I would be implementing same state management in the context API, official version of the React. And in the third video, I would be comparing, what you can say, context API with the Redux in depth. So first you need to know how exactly these things are working. First Redux, then the context API, and then the comparison. This is how we will go. So this is the library called as Redux. So when you talk about the Redux, a predictable Redux helps you to write the application that behaves consistently, centralized, debuggable, and the flexible. So it's a state management, a central place to store the data. So what do you mean by that? Let me tell you over here. So this is your React application, and React application needs some common data. Remember that when you talk about the state, it is that data that needs to be preserved. So I can say this is your React app, and this thing you can call it as a state. The data that needs to be preserved for a longer duration during the re-renders. For that we use something called as state. Now consider that you have 10 components: login component, dashboard component, then friend list component, and whatever, chat component, whatnot, lot of other components you have. Now you need to store the data. So all these components wants to share the common data. So how do you handle that? I told you, either you can write your code on your own by means of the props, context API, use reducers or reducer functions, or you can go to the third party library like a Redux. Okay, now if you see, Redux is having a React flavor also, and this is something called as toolkit. Now what happens, let me tell you. Implementation of the Redux, you might find that it is little bit complex. To reduce that complexity, Redux team has developed one helper library that is called as toolkit. One helper library that is called as what? Toolkit. Now in our project, we are going to use the Redux toolkit. Now if you go here, this is the official, just click on the React Redux, you would be navigated to this page, getting started with the React Redux. And over here, we know how to create the React app. We know how to create the React app. We will build the React app and we will do this thing. So before going over there, I will create one Git repository, and I can create one repository over here, and here I can say React state management, Okay, let me create the repository. Let me clone it. CD desktop and git clone, and just paste it on the desktop. I will clone it straight away. And in the VS Code, let's open that thing. Open the folder, go to the desktop and React state management library. Right? Now what I will do next part, let me create the project. Go to the official documentation. Over here. And first, so I'm going to take a reverse engineering approach. First, we are going to implement few things. Right? And then I'm going to explain back few things. We will do that thing in that way, in the reverse engineering approach. So npx create React app, just copy this. Well, let me tell you why I'm recording this session. Lot of my students have said that please make a recording on this thing. So this becomes pretty difficult to understand, and that's why I'm recording this thing. Right? So here you can say cd React state management and just paste. I have already copied the command. See here, if you go here, this is the official website, reduxjs.org. Then go to the React Redux, and when you say React Redux, you will find under the get started, you will find this. Just copy that and you can paste it over here. So I already have pasted that. So you might have used something called as, npx create React app, and you can say Redux demo. Right? But if you see over here, a template Redux. So there are a lot of templates we can add, like a TypeScript also there. And a lot of things we can create a React project in the different way. So just add this thing, -- template and the Redux. Very, very important thing to note. And you can say -- template and Redux, -- template and what? Redux. And hit the enter, and you will find that a new project would be getting created with the with the Redux in place in your React project. Okay, so see, a project is getting created. It will take few minutes. So as I told you, we are going to implement few things, and we are going to come back and we will discuss some details. So let's say create the project. So it will take a little time to build the project, but it will build for sure. If you are on a mobile net, that might be a little bit slower, but if you are on a proper Wi-Fi or the fiber optic, you would be getting very fast data. Now here if you can see, we are talking about the state management library. Do not forget that what we are trying to achieve. So this is one component, 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 and all of them wants to share the common data. In the React we call it as a state. Now I told you this can be achieved by means of the native props, this can be achieved by means of the context API and the use reducers together. Whatever we are trying to achieve, natively we can build a state management library with these three things: props, context API, and you can say reducers, right? But today we are going to take little different approach, mostly used library in the market, that's nothing but the Redux. And how it works, that we will see actually today. Now hopefully project has been created. Yes, project has been created. Let's move into the project Redux demo. And remember that I'm using same Git repository for both the things, for implementing the Redux and implementing the context API. Okay, so it would be really great to track the things for you. Now project has been created. Now just make a npm start. Well team, remember that I am considering that you know what exactly React is. You have little experience on the React is. So I'm thinking that you know what React is, and I'm thinking that you know what exactly state is and other thing is in the React. And from that perspective, I am recording this session. Well, if you don't know what is a React and you directly have landed on this video, I'm requesting you stay in the session. Stay in the complete session. So this session would be really helpful for you in understanding many aspects related to the React. Instead, you do some other things on the YouTube or playing the games. Stay in the session. It is for you, right? It will really help you. I'm damn sure. Okay, let's go here, and we have created the project over here, a node modules and something like that. A typical React project has been created. Let me push it immediately as an initial commit. So as created the project, we have pushed it. Right, I have committed, and let's push the project. I'm pushing it. Okay, project has been pushed. Now what architecture we would be implementing? See, this architecture we would be implementing. So when you talk about the Redux, you need to know few things. And that few things are nothing but what? What do you mean by dispatch? What do you mean by actions? Can you see there is something called as action? What do you mean by store? What do you mean by reducer? What do you mean by state? Few key terminologies you should know, as what do you mean by dispatch? What do you mean by action? What do you mean by store? What do you mean by reducer? What do you mean by state? Right? What do you mean by UI? So UI is normal UI. So I will start the things from the UI. So I consider that you guys are knowing what do you mean by a React component. So let me write a very basic component. I would be writing a very basic component. Let's go here, and then under the features directory, right, I will create one more folder. Let's create one more folder, and I would be naming that folder. So let's go here, one folder, and I would be creating a new folder, say login. Okay, we can say this thing as a login. Now Login folder has been created. Now you know how to create the component in the React login.js. Also we would be needing some more files, but we will do that later on. Export function, and I can say login. Export function login. As per the definition of the React, a function which returns the JSX is called as component. This is your normal UI. The function which returns the JSX is called as component. Well, there is one more definition of the component in the React. If the class which extends React components overrides the render function, and that render function returns the JSX, that is also called as class-based components. This is a function component. In this tutorial or in this session, we are going to work with, you can say, function components only. Well, Tim, if you want me to record a complete session on the React, a full React, from hello world to the deployment, everything, please write me in the comment box. Right? Please do it in the comment box. And let me play a little animation for subscribing, so that you will get little bit notification that you need to subscribe to my channel. Well, I will not say subscribe to my channel, rather I will say if you like it, please stay with me. And if you want me to record more and more videos like this for inspiring me, for motivating me, just subscribe it. That's it. So we are developing something called as login functionality. And while developing login functionality, we would be using something called as Redux. We would be using something called as what? Redux. Okay. So one more thing I would be using during this session is called as styled components. Another third-party library. I will not talk about this library much in this session. As I said, if you want me to record the separate session on the styled components, please let me know. I will do that as well. I would be happy to help you guys, right? So no problem. So first, what is the styled components? Easier way to create the styled components. Okay. So let me go here. And let me copy this section. So let's go to our this thing and just install the styled component. So I'm repeating again, team. See, I'm repeating again. Deliberately, I'm not talking on the styled components. What do you mean by styled components? If you want me to record the session on the styled components, please let me know in the comment boxes. Okay, this is a very interesting topic, styled components also. But our today's session is not related to the styled components, but it is related to the Redux. We will do that thing graciously. Okay, let's do npm start. Okay, now what I want to do, I want to design a login screen first. Let's design the login screen. Remember that we are implementing this architecture. So we are going to implement all those things. But in the beginning, we will design this UI. Okay. In the beginning, we will design this UI. Remember that we will design this UI. Okay. So let's consider that this UI is nothing but what? A login screen. So we will discuss what is a dispatch, what is a store, what is a reducer, what is the state, what is the action, all that things we will discuss time to time. So first let me build the UI. Now remember that we have installed styled components. Now here we can create some components which are required, which is nothing but const centered div. We can say centered div is equals to styled dot div. styled dot div. Now we need to import this styled. Just a minute. So let me import this styled. Let's import the style from this section, and we can say styled. Now see, you are creating a div over here, and you can say display flex. Before that I will add width. Remember that this concept in the JavaScript is called as tagged template literals. Well, this is altogether another concept. So width I can say 100 VW, height I can say 100 VH, right? Display flex, justify content center, align item center. Now I am assuming that you know what is a CSS3 and you have worked with the flex box. So here you created a centered div. So here you can add this as a component immediately, and inside that you can create, and I can say a display direction, flex direction is column. Flex direction is what? Column. Okay. Now here we have created this centered div. Well, in my project, in our application, I'm just deleting unwanted things just to confuse you little less. A login we would be needing. Index.css I'm deleting. Well, in the index.js, so this guy we don't need. The web vitals presently I'm not going to discuss. Strict mode also you can delete it. We don't require right now. So I want to keep this code as much as possible minimum. I want to keep it. Okay. Now here we can have something called as main.js. Main.js would be also a function. Export function main. Programmers are happy to see the main than other names. And inside this I am going to add our login. We already have created this login guy over here, and that login. And inside the index.js, I will add main. I will add what? Main. Just import the main first. Import main from the main. See what we did? I deleted the app.js and simply created a main. You can consider from here your application would be getting started. And the login, presently there is nothing, only one centered div we have created. In the main, we created a main and written this thing. Well team, just as an interview question, let me know what do you mean by this empty brackets. In the comment box, what do you mean by this empty brackets? Please let me know. This empty bracket, why I have written like this? It is an interview question. It is for you. Please let me know in the chat box. Okay, so provider, main. So we will talk about this thing very soon. What do you mean by this guy? Provider, store, and other than that, we will see in a minute. So let us check, is there any error? No, there is no error, and there is no UI also. Again, I am repeating, again I am coming to the flow. We are implementing this thing. UI. Just this architecture we want to implement, and from this architecture I am implementing this thing, a UI. Then we will discuss what do you mean by this store section and other thing. Okay. So team, be available in the session with the body and the mind. Learning is a psychosomatic process. You should be available with me with your mind and the body, both the things. And then and only then you will get the expected results in the learning. So what I said, learning is a psychosomatic process. So you should be available with your body and mind together. So please be with me. It will really help you in your career. Okay. Now here we can have login, centered div. Let's add input boxes. Well, we can create input boxes like this over here. So I can say const IP, input box IP, and again styled dot in styled dot again we can say just a minute. Now we would be needing the input box. Yeah, styled dot input we can say, and style dot input would be something like this. I can say a padding from all four sides would be little bit like this. A margin from all four sides would be little bit like this. And I want to give a color to the text like this. I want to give a color would be like this, sorry, comma, and then background would be like this. A background color would be like this, and there shouldn't be any border, but I want a rounded corners. I want to have a rounded corners like this. Okay, remember that flex direction is a column, and inside this centered div, in a centered div we can have IP. I can say like this, type is equals to text. Type is equals to text. Placeholder is equals to username. Placeholder is equals to username. And we can have password. We can have password. Can you see that? Username and the password. We can increase little bit font size, and that font size would be say 2 EM. I hope you know what do you mean by EM. It's a element. These are the relative units, username and password. Element size of the element would be like this, 1.5. Just make it 1.5 EM like this. And we would be needing a button. So I would be needing a button. So when you say a button, let's have say login button, const login button. So styled dot button, and here we would be needing a background color, I would be needing a background color would be this, then foreground color would be white, then font size, font size would be 1.5 EM. Padding, you can say from the left 0.25 EM, and from the right it's 1 EM. Border radius, same thing. Border radius what? Same thing. And let's use a login button over here. Login button. like this, and I can say login. And I can say what? Login. If you see a login button, we have login button, username and password. Well, in the login button, simply say background, don't say color. Background, say foreground color, okay. Button, and if you see this thing, just a minute. Okay, I don't know, somehow the color is not getting appeared over here, but no problem. Let's leave that thing behind and we will proceed. So this is a username, this is a password. So here we have login button. So simple login screen we have designed. Hello? Simple login screen we have designed. So when you talk about UI, remember that you are talking about something like this. So you build the UI. Now we need to design the login screen. So you build the UI. Now after that, can you see there is a button, and button is nothing but what? The event handler, event dispatcher. On click, here you can say, and here you can say on perform on CLK LGN, on CLK what? LGN. So here you can say const on CLK LGN, and see on the click of the login, this function would be called. You can say console.log, you can say login clicked, and go here, open the inspector and just refresh it, and can you see on login clicked is there, on login clicked, can you see? Which means that a global state management library, inside this architecture we build this UI. Now see, this UI button click is an event handler. So this guy is an event handler, and we are going to dispatch the actions. Now what do you mean by a dispatch function? See, dispatching function. So whenever you talk about the Redux, as I told you, remember that whenever you talk about the Redux, few fundamental things you need to accept as it is. Whenever you talk about Redux, few fundamental things you need to accept as it is. What is a store? What is a reducer? What is the state? What is the dispatch? What is the action? You need to remember these things as it is. Now whenever you go to this section which is available on the official documentation, let us start with what do you mean by store. A store is an object that holds the application state tree. There would be only single store in a Redux app, as composition happens at the reducer level, right? So store is a single place where complete application state is going to be stored. Now I said that I will come back to that point little bit later on. Let's just delete this. So for now only I am deleting it. just to make you less confused, because there are a lot of files available in here. Can you see, go to the app folder, and inside app, can you see store.js? Can you see there is something called as store.js? And if you see configure store, right, just delete this guy also. Configure store, see here, configure store. So this configure store is going to generate this whole yellow bigger block. Now if you see, store is the global state where exactly state is going to be stored. Can you see? Store is this function. And who creates the store? The store has been created by the configure store. And your store knows the reducers. Now what is a reducer? We will see in a minute. See now, a reducer. So built in, whenever you create the application, when you have created the application by means of the Redux template, React has given you this built-in store. If you go to the features, can you see there is a counter, and see this built-in component has been created just for a demo, so that you can refer this code and you can develop it, right? So this is that counter. Okay, that's not the concern right now. We need to talk about what do you mean by a reducer. Now see, as per the official documentation, when you say, can you see this page, whenever you want to implement the Redux in your application, this page would be a single point of truth for you, because these are the basic terms that you should know. What do you mean by store? A global container. There is only one instance of the store. Can you see here into the store.js, export const store, and this store is here. And see now, go to the index.js, and the store has been provided over here. You created the store. What is store? Ask this question again and again to you. Come on this page again and again. A store is an object that holds the application state tree. There should only be a single store. That is the definition of the store. So you created the store over here. You created the store over here, and you provided into the system over here. And because of these two lines, whatever things you write inside these two lines, they have access to the common central store. Now concern is that do not forget what we are trying to achieve. We are trying to achieve a central state management. So you have 20 components in your React app, and all of them want to share the common data. That is nothing but the state is. And that's why we have used the Redux over here, right? And Redux, when you talk about the Redux, this is the architecture diagram. You can see with the animations over here. So you created the UI, you created the store, right? You created the store. Now we will build a reducer for our application. Now we need to talk first, what do you mean by reducer? You go here, and here you can say a reducer, also called as reducing function, is a function that accepts an accumulation and value and returns a new accumulation, right? They are used to reduce, see this is very important, they are used to reduce collection of the values to one single value. When you say reducer, this definition, this line is very important. They are used to reduce a collection of values down to a single value, a multiple values collected, and they are going to create a single state variable. That's what the reducer does. So whenever you write the reducer, right, whenever you write the reducer, remember that what you are writing, multiple values reduce to a single common value. That's what the reducer function is. Now see, reducers are not unique to the Redux. They are the fundamental concept in the functional programming. Even most of the non-functional languages like JavaScript have built-in API for reducing. In the Redux, the accumulated value is a state object. It is nothing but your central state. And the values being accumulated are actions. This is very important. The accumulated value is a state object. Can you see? First parameter is the state object. And the values being accumulated are the actions. Now see, reducers calculate a new state given the previous state and action. See, to the reducer you need to give a previous state and the action, and they will give you new state. Reducer, you need to give a previous state and the action, which will give you a new state. That's what the reducer is. So whenever you say I am writing a reducer, remember that you are giving a old state plus action. It will give you a new state. Now what is an action? We are saying action again and again. See, the action is a plain object that represents intention to change the state. The object whose intention to change the state. Okay, let's take a pause over here. If you think this is too much, wait, hold. This is what the JavaScript is. Remember that this is what the Redux is. We are thinking the applications like Netflix. We are thinking the applications like Trello. We are thinking the applications like Zoom. In that applications, you need a global state management library. And at that time, Redux will help you. That's why we are learning this thing. Do not forget what we are trying to achieve. 20 components wants to share the data. Right? Presently, we have only one component. And we will achieve that for the one component also. So let's take a pause. What we have seen? We have seen what do you mean by store. We have seen what do you mean by reducer. We have seen what do you mean by action. I know you will forget this, and this is very good. If you forget, that's very good, no problem. Come to this page again and again. Read it again and again, and I am damn sure you will become the expert. I'm damn sure you'll understand the things. You can also revise this video again and again. No problem. Stop, watch it again. Stop, watch it again. Okay. Now, in our application, in this application, if someone asks you, boss, where is the store? Can you show me? Just go to the app folder inside that store.js and you can say this is the store, right? Now, I will show you one thing, console.log store.getState. GetState. Remember that state is a global data. The store is responsible for giving you a state. If you go to the store, a store is an object that holds the application state tree. So returns the current state of the store. See here, we just have called. So the store object is responsible for sharing the state across the application. Okay. Now it is time to write our first reducer. For writing that reducer, you need to create a separate file called as login slice.js. Now when you say slice, what do you mean by slice? A section of a big state object is called as slice. So this store is having the state variable. This state is divided into the little sections. This state is divided into the little sections, and those sections we are going to call it as a slice. So first we will create the slice. Remember that I told you one more thing about the Redux, that is nothing but the toolkit. Now toolkit will come into the picture. So concept of the Redux is little bit complex at the core, and the implementation adds more complexity to it. And that's why Redux developers came together and they started in this way. Why not to release the developers' tension, and why not to relax their job? And how do you do that thing? How do they implemented that thing? By means of the toolkit. Now toolkit will come into the picture, right? So first we need to import the slice, right? So first what we will do, let me import this first section which is already there in your project, and let's remove this async thunk from here. You can say create slice from, can you see, Redux toolkit. Now when you talk about the slice, I told you what do you mean by slice. Slice is that part which divides your global state into the little sections. You will get to know what do you mean by slice. So when you say slice, there is a one function called as create slice, right? That's what we have done over here. Here you can say create slice, right? See this, a function. We can export const and we can say login slice is equals to this function. Now this function has three important aspects. What is the name of the slice? So I can say login. Then what is the initial state? Now see, we can have const initial state is equals to what it would be having. It would be having username, then it would be having password, initial state, initial data. Presently it would be having this thing, so you can pass initial state as it is. I know, I am very sure you would be knowing what do you mean by destructuring of the object. If the key of the object and if the key and the variable name of the object is same, you don't need to write something like this, initial state colon initial state. You can write just like this initial state, right? And then there is something called as reducers. There are two things actually, reducers and extra reducers, right? Do not forget what do you mean by reducer. So this extra reducer, let me delete it right now, right? Do not forget what do you mean by reducer. Again go to that page, go to the reducer, and here you can say in a Redux, accumulated value is the state object and the value being accumulated is the action. Reducer calculate the new state given the previous state and the action. Now see here, what is the action? Intention to change the state is the action. What is the action? Intention to change the state. So I will write a simple reducer over here. Right inside that we can say verify, or you can say check username. Check username is one of the action, you can say, is one of the reducer, and that reducer would be having state and action. State and action. So remember that what is reducer? Reducer is something which gives you new state if you provide them a old state and the action. What is action? Intention to change the state is called as action. What is action? Intention to change the state is called as action. What is this? Old state. What is this reducer? Old state and action gives you the new state object, that is called as reducer. So one slice can have multiple reducers. You can write them over here. Again I am repeating, what is store? A global data of the application which is responsible for providing the state, right? What is slice? A little portion of the whole state is called as slice. What do you mean by reducer? if you can give a old state and the action which reduce to the new state, that is nothing but what the reducer is. What is action? Intention to change the state is called as this action, right? Now if you go to the architecture diagram, your store gives you the state object, and your store is requiring the reducers. Try to understand what is a reducer. Can you see? Now whenever someone is click on the button, event is getting dispatched. Now what is the dispatch we will see. So this UI is going to dispatch the actions. That actions are input to the reducers, which are nothing but this action. So old state plus action is equals to new state is called as reducer, right? So these things are pretty confusing to the people. These things confuses people a lot. So we discussed what is store. Just remember this diagram. This diagram is everything for you. We are implementing this architecture. We discussed what do you mean by store. We discussed what do you mean by reducer. We discussed what do you mean by state. We build this UI. Now see, this store would be having multiple reducers, and by means of reducers, store gives the state. Now if you go to the store is available in app.js. Can you see? Here you are writing the reducers. The way counter reducer has been created, we also need to create our own reducer. Now see, how do you do that? Export default, and I can say login slice dot reducer. Can you see? That's it. That's it about your complete React app. Initial state, slice, and slice will give you the reducer. Now we need to import this guy over here. Import login reducer from, we can say dot features. Inside of features there is a login folder. Inside that there is a login slice, and here I can say, remember that this name should be very same as this name. So what name you have given over here, just copy that name, and here you can write that name, and this login reducer needs to be written over here. Now see, store knows the reducers. Can you see architecture? This whole store knows the reducers. Now again come to the page. Again I will revise. What is a store? What is a reducer? What is a state? When you talk about the store, which gives you the global state, which gives you what? The global state. The store is having reducers. What do you mean by reducer? Old state plus action is equals to new state. Old state plus action reduced to the new state, that is the responsibility of the reducer. What is action? Intention to change the state is the action. Now see, we have created the store, we have got the reducer, we got the state. Well, state object, how do you access? We will see very shortly, right? But I revised those concepts. Now see, your UI is having event handler. What is the event handler over here? On click. Can you see? Go to the login.js. Now see, this is responsible. This is called as event handler. So login button is going to generate this. Whenever you are going to click on the login button, it will call this function. That is nothing but the event handler. And event handler is going to dispatch the actions. Event handler is going to dispatch the actions. For that, first we would be needing the actions. Remember that what is action? Intention to change the state is called as action. Okay. Now this is called as one action. Let's go here. Now see, we need to export it. Const, you can say check username. Check username is equals to login slice dot actions. So here, from here you have exported check username. We can go here and now see, first you need to import that action. Remember that your event handler is going to dispatch the actions. Now go here and you can say check username from the login slice. But how do you dispatch the action? I will collapse this, and I will collapse this, so it would be easy for understanding. Now how do you dispatch the actions? Remember that there are two things: import, you can say use dispatch, use, just a minute, in the counter, yeah, use selector and the use dispatch from this React Redux. Same thing I will copy over here. Yeah, use selector, use dispatch. I will remove this line. Use selector, what is that? We will see very shortly. Now see, const dispatch is equals to use dispatch. Do not get confused. Come to the architecture diagram. We build the store, we build the reducers, we build the state. And now your event handler, that is the login click, wants to dispatch the actions. For dispatching the actions, Redux has given you one hook called as dispatch. It is very simple. We need to dispatch this check username action. Okay. Now you go over here, and then check username, you can write it, just call it check username. It's a function, and just write dispatch like this. Now see, your event handler has dispatched the action. Your event handler has dispatched the action. Come to the architecture diagram. UI is going to generate the events. The event handler is going to dispatch the action. Remember that check username is the action. If you go over here, const check username, login slice dot action, login slice dot action. You getting my point? Login slice dot actions. Remember that event handler dispatches the action, right? A dispatch is a function which dispatches the actions. What is the actions? Intention to change the state. What is the store? A global state container. What is the reducer? Old state plus action is equals to new state. What is a slice? A section of the state is the slice. So first we build this, then we added our reducers in the store, and now we build the dispatch over here. See here. Okay, now what I need to do? Check username is one of the action. Check password is one of the action. See, check password is one of the action, right? And auth is one of the action. Auth is one of the action. State and action. Remember that we are writing actions inside the reducers. Okay. Now to this IP, what I need to do? Let's go here. I will update little bit UI. In the IP, we have this thing, and then I would be having, say, IP container, const IP cont is equals to styled dot div, and here I can say a display flex. That's it. Display flex, that's it. And here what I will do, and I would need an image also. I would need, okay, not image, no problem, a simple label I would be needing, a const STSL label, status label. You can say styled dot label, styled dot label, and presently I don't know what to do with this. You can say font size 1.5 em, I can say 1.5 em. Okay, now let me add this to the IP cont. So we would be having this and STS label, and inside this either I would be having the tick mark like this. Presently I will have something like this. Similarly, I can add IP cont to IP container to this guy also. IP container over here, and then STS label, that might be cross. If it is valid, it will show tick. If it is not valid, it will show cross. Just refresh it. Yeah, can you see here? Now IP cont justify content center, align items center. So it will come to the center exactly. So if username is valid, it should be green tick. Password is valid, it should be green tick. That's what you can say. Check username. So in the slice I have written check password also. Now if the username is greater than 3 and the password is greater than 3, this should be green ticks. That's what I want to do. As I am go on typing, I need to check these things. And how this thing will happen, it is like this. How this thing will happen, let me show you. So first you need to capture the on change event const. So we would be needing const on ch usnm is equals to this function we would be calling, and then const pass on ch password, this function would be getting called. We can say on ch usnm, sorry, on change is the react HTML event, and to that I will pass this on change usnm. Similarly, on change over here, and to that I can pass on change pass over here. Okay, and from here also I can dispatch it. So instead of this I can say dispatch, and I can pass the data, that is the event I would be getting. So whenever on change function would be getting called, this event I would be getting. Team or people, if you are watching this video, I am considering that you know the React. How do you read the data from the input box? All that things you know, and on that ground I am writing this code. If you don't know, well and good. You should go through the code and you should understand what's happening exactly, right? So here I can say e dot target dot value. If you want me to create the React course from the beginning, please let me know in the chat box, sorry, comment box. So dispatch. So very easy to understand. So it is check, we can say check, I think we didn't exported this check password and auth, check password and what? Auth, check password and auth. Now here here check password, check username, check password. Now see, you have dispatched the action. Remember that you have dispatched the action to the reducer. Now from whenever there is any change, you are dispatching actions and particular check username, and this thing would be getting called. So in the state, well, we don't require this over here. Is username valid? Is username valid? By default false. And then is password valid? Is password valid? False. Is username valid? False. Is password valid? False. Now see, I will just console.log over here, and you will get to know console.log action, right? Check username, and here also console.log action, check password. Now if you go, can you see the state variable inside? So this thing is getting printed from here, so that thing is getting printed from here. Can you see console.log store.getState? Now what is the slice? You can see over here. What is the slice? Counter is one of the slice. This is a total global state. Counter is one of the slice. Login is one of the slice, right? Slice means what? Portion of the global state, right? Now in the login, is password valid? Is username valid? In the counter, something like the status and like that we have. Now here we need to check the details. Here we need to check the details. In the here inside the action, remember that. Now let me go on typing this. Can you see? So if I type like this, it gets over here. So here you have a action object, action dot payload dot. Can you see? Action dot payload is nothing but this string action. The whole object is called as action. You have printed action over here. So this whole object is called as action. Action dot payload means what? Whatever you have typed, you will get over here. So easy condition we need to write. Easy condition we need to write. Just basic validation we will apply. If action dot payload LOAD dot length is greater than 3, then what? Inside the state, the username need to be valid. Then what? State dot is username valid is equals to true. Or very basic logic, instead of writing if loop, a good programmers will do something like this. Just remove this thing. Just remove this thing. This is what you are gonna do, or you are going to say else it is false. So this thing can be written, good programmers will do something like this. Action dot length is greater than 3. So meaning of these two lines is exactly equals to meaning of this line. I will comment these, both of these, so that you can compare this later on. So here you can say action dot, so here action dot payload. So here we can say state dot is password valid is equals to action dot payload dot length is greater than 3. Remember that these two lines and this line is one and same. There is no difference. Now auth, we'll talk about that little bit later on, about the auth. Now see, there is no access to the state. There is no access to the state inside the component. Now see here, event dispatcher is going to dispatch the action to the store, dispatch the action to the reducers. Inside reducers you will perform this job. So you have performed this job inside the reducers. But how do you access the state in the login component? And that's why there was one more thing, use selector. So use selector will allow you to select the state into this thing, into this complete thing. Now see here, const, you can say is user valid is equals to use selector, and it requires a function state arrow state dot is user valid, is what's username valid or what is user valid. Okay, is username valid, everywhere we have used what username, otherwise it will give you error. Is username valid? Well, this name can be anything, no problem, but keep it simple. Is password valid, and here instead of state, remember that's, so here you will get access to the complete state, so you need to give a name of the slice also, login dot login. So it is convention that instead of this function to be written over here, this function need to be written in a, well, you can write over there also, but it's a bad practice. Const, so whatever you have written over there, so this function you have written inside what component, but it is a best practice that this needs to be written inside the particular slice only. So you can say select username is equals to same function, we can write the same function over here, copy and paste it, export const select password is equals to same thing, just is password valid, is password valid. So here you can instead, so these two lines are very similar to, let me just copy these two first. Let me copy these two first, and from here we can import, we can say select username and select password, right? So instead of writing this function over here, it is convention that you should write it in the particular slice, select password. So here you got the object of this. Now what, you just need to apply a condition over here. So you can say if is username valid, if is username valid, then do this thing, otherwise assign the cross mark over here. Similarly, same thing, instead of is username, here you can say is password. Now can you see by default both the things are invalid, I can say a. Now this thing has to be changed. Is username valid? Is password valid? I'm sorry, is password valid? And here can you see it is valid, it is valid. Can you see tick mark, and automatically if you remove this it will be erased. Can you see, automatically you have written the code in that way, right? ZZZ and something like this. So state management, a global state management. So in the state variable you are entering these details, and see this architecture, your UI means on every click event action is getting dispatched to the reducers. Reducer is having old state, reducer is having new action, from that it is generating a new state. See now here, your reducer is having old state, reducer is having a new action. Whenever you dispatch something from here, whenever you dispatch something right? Whenever, can you see on change, you are firing this function, and this function is dispatching. The moment it calls the check username, can you see this guy gets invoked? When you dispatch check password, this guy gets invoked. So whenever this guy gets invoked, it is having old state and it is having this new action. In the action there is a payload. So old state, new action, new state. Old state, new action accumulated to the new state. Old state, new action accumulated to the new state. So this thing is called as what you can say, reducer. So in our application, you build this thing first, right? And then you build this thing. So this is a core fundamentals of the Redux. So when you say Redux, these are the core fundamentals of the Redux. What is dispatch? What is store? What is reducer? What is state? Revise it 10 times. Come to this page again and again. This is the official page available, right? Official page available. Core architecture of the Redux. UI will dispatch the actions. Dispatch actions will go to the reducers. Reducers would be having old state and the new action, which will create a new state, right? Store is a state container which is having access to the all the state. That is nothing but what the store is. So this is the core Redux. Now there is something called as, how do you handle the asynchronous events? If you see, this and this is same, this and this guy is same. Just one thing is added over here, is a middleware. Now see, so on the click of the login, right? I want to go to the server and perform the login over there. How do you do that? For that, you need to use something called as fetch calls, or if you are from the React background, you know there is something called as Axios. But in this architecture, where you will call that particular thing. Now going to the server and coming back is a asynchronous process. Going to the server and coming back is a asynchronous process. So that asynchronous processing in the Redux can be handled in the separate reducers, right? So we need to write the actions outside this reducer, and the place where we perform the async operations is called as Thunk. Is called as what? Thunk. So here you can say create async Thunk. The place where we do asynchronous operations is called as Thunk. So here we need to give, asynchronous actions. Now see, this auth action cannot be performed over here. This auth action can be performed separately. So if you see in the counterpart, they already have written the Thunk, right? If you see, create async Thunk, the function below is called as Thunk and allows us to perform the async logic, right? It can be dispatched like a regular actions, like a dispatch and name of your Thunk. This will call a Thunk with the dispatch function as the first argument. The async code can be executed and the other actions can be dispatched. Thunks are typically used to make the async requests. Let's create a Thunk. First parameter you need to give a name, and second parameter is a function. Okay, second parameter is nothing but what? A function. Now here what I can do, create async thunk. So it is a convention you need to write a slice name, after that the action name. So here we can say login, and after that auth, action name is auth. This is a first parameter we have. This is the first thing we have, sorry, in the thunk, create async thunk. And remember that this is a separate action. The actions can be written separately over here, and then there is a function where we perform the async operation. Inside this function we will perform the async operation. So here we can say export, export const async auth, we can say export const async auth. So here you can have a fetch call, right? So this would be a typical action. So few actions you have written under the reducers, but few actions you write under something called as extra reducers. The way we have written over here, can you see reducers and extra reducers? And there is something called as a builder, and let me just get this extra reducers, this much piece of code in here in my project, and we will discuss. Remember that extra reducers are used to invoke, see, extra reducers field let the slice handles action defined elsewhere. If you see, actions are defined over here, but you can say increment async is not defined in here, that has been defined separately, right? And that actions can be handled over here. Now see here, async auth is there. Remember that it is going to return the promise. Remember that async auth is going to return what? Promise. Now you know what is a promise. So when you say promise, async auth is going to return what? Promise. Promise is an eventual completion of the event, eventual completion or the failure of the event in the future, not immediately, right? That's the promise. Let's not discuss what is a promise. That is a separate altogether JavaScript concept we can cover in the separate video, right? So extra reducers would work with the promises. Now see, we know every promise would be having kind of three states. First, pending state, fulfilled state, pending state, fulfilled state, and rejected state. And here you can say state means phase, not this state, remember that, and error you can get over here. So every promise would be having three levels or three stages, that is a pending, fulfilled, and the rejected. Now here I want to perform actual login on one of the server. You know that there is a fake server called as request-response.in, and here we can, this is a fake API they have given. We can use this fake API, and can you see login successful? So we need to post this JSON and they will return this token, right? And success response is this. So let's copy this req-res.in /API/login. We can say /API/login. This is the URL I want to hit. Now I want to post which this object, we can say body. In a body I need to pass this JSON, so JSON dot stringify, and for the success now we need this username and password. Well, we can read this username and password, no problem. We can put it in a state, so here we can say username presently empty and the password. Okay, let's do a static kind of thing right now. Let's do static kind of thing. So from here we are passing one JSON that they have given. Well, I can do, so this email, so complete this object I will paste from here and paste it in here, right? And see, a method would be the post method. A method would be the post method. It's not a get method. And headers you need to pass. You can pass the headers. And here you can say content type application JSON. So team, intention of this video is not to explain you all these things, what is fetch, what is post and all these things. Intention of this session is to teach you what is a reducer or what is a redux, and that's what we are trying to do over here. Now see here, is auth success, presently I can say false. Is auth success, presently I can say false. Now see, just print the so if fulfilled means success, just go over here console.log and I can just put the action over here and just put the action over here, and you go just refresh it, click on the login, nothing will happen because in the login you didn't dispatch this action. So async auth is an action, right? You need to import right here async auth and you need to dispatch it on the login. You can say dispatch async auth like this. Presently there is no username and password over here, but we can pass it async auth like this. Okay. Now if you want to read what you can say username and password that is available in this text box, you need to have a state variable const, a local state usnm, you can say set usnm, set usnm, or straight away over here you are dispatching check username, this value can you see, and that is available over here, and that is available to you inside this reducer. So here you would be having action.payload is nothing but the username and this is nothing but the password. Let's put it over here and we can say email presently empty and the password presently empty, but in here we can say state dot email is equals to action dot payload and state dot password also action dot payload. Okay, and now instead of passing this okay, that's the concern. So create async thunk is here. Okay, a lot of things needs to be changed in the architecture if you want to do this thing. Just remove this thing. Just remove this thing right now. And we will work with the static data. Well, I can do that. It will take little time. So from here, I need to pass, if you want to do that thing, from here I need to pass username and password. That would be captured over here. Let's do that. Let's not. You need to have a state over here, const usnm, set usnm, set usnm is equals to use state, default is empty. Well, you can have a one object also, pass, and I can say set pass. And here, before dispatching it to the event, before dispatching, you can say set usnm e dot target dot value, and in here also, set pass e dot target dot value. Okay, e dot target dot value. And whenever you call the async, here you can pass usnm and the password, usnm and the password. And here it is the method email and the pass, right? And here you can say email and the pass as it is. Now, whenever you click on the login button, either, or you can say console.log, it is processing. Here we can say it's processing, success, spelling, I'm sorry about the spelling, and failed. Okay, so we printed the action over here. Let's go over here and you can say a. So this username and password we need to send, just click. Can you see it's processing? You received success, and can you see the action? So response type something status 400. It's a bad data. The reason behind is that the API that we have chosen, if you want to have a success, you need to have this email. Just copy that email and paste it in our UI. And if you want a success response, just paste this password. Paste this password and just click this. 400 login. A non-serializable value was detected in action in the payload. Success, payload response type CORS. In the payload we are okay. In the network tab, what's happening exactly? A missing password. It is saying missing password. So missing password, are we not passing the password? Okay, email and pass is wrong. You can say password. Key should be same. Email is okay and password should be like this. Just refresh it, console, and just write like this, login. So there is a problem again in the network. Now this is a genuine problem, user not found, right? User not found. So we need to go with their given username and password for the success. Just copy and paste it, and here also you can paste it like this, and clear the console. Go to the console, clear it again, click on the login, and can you see a non-serializable value was detected in action. Yeah, got it. So here you can say dot then, and your response need to be converted to the JSON, response.json. And if you just refresh it and again copy paste the same username and password, I am very sure you will get the success. I'm very sure you will get the success, and paste it. Can you see it is working, succeeded? And in a payload you can see there is a token, and this token is sent to you by server. And if you pass some bad username and password, see now there is in the payload something is happening like that, fulfilled and something like that. So here look at the screen very properly. You have used the reducers, you have used extra reducers, right? So when you talk about the extra reducers, the actions which are not defined over here, if you want to work with that actions, you need to have extra reducers, or these things are also called as case-based reducers. Also called as what? Case-based reducers. Just format the document. Yeah, and here also format the document. So case-based reducers. So when you say case-based reducers, the things which are asynchronous means the things which would be getting executed in the future, things that would be getting executed in the future, that things can be worked as asynchronous processing, and asynchronous things in the Redux can be handled as a Thunk. See now, this architecture we implemented. So this middleware. Now see what is happening. Event handler means button click is dispatching the async action. Async action is nothing but your Thunk. Thunk is sending request to the server. Whenever server is giving you a response back, again this Thunk is dispatching the action to the reducer, particular extra reducer, right? Extra reducer is manipulating the state and updating the UI. Remember that it is updating what? UI, right? So this is the core architecture of the Redux, and this is a Thunk related thing we have added, that architecture of the Redux. Now let me revise point by point what we are trying to achieve. We are trying to achieve something called as global state management. A 20 components wants to share the data. So that you have decided to go with the central state. There are multiple solutions like context API, props use reducers. These are the native to the React. But I thought that my application is more complex, middlewares are there, asynchronous processing is there. Let's go with the third-party library called as Redux. So I have opted for the Redux, right? Now Redux has a React flavor also, and there is one helper library called as Toolkit, right? So if you think about the Redux, this is a big picture you can see in your front of eyes. Our UI, dispatchers, store, reducers, state, and the action. Now, what is a store? The place where we create the central state. The place where we create what? Central state. That is nothing but what the store is. Now, store always gives you the state. If you see this code, store always gives you the state. A get state is there. This is the configuration of the store. Inside the store, you write the reducers. You name the reducers. Inside the store, you register the reducers. Now, what is the reducer? Old state plus new action is reduced to a new state. What is action? Intention to change the state is called as action. Now see here in our project, these are the actions. Check username, check password. Can you see? Actions, login slice dot actions. What is slice? A section of your global state. A section of your global state. Can you see? Counter is a little slice, a login is little slice. What do you mean by counter and the login? These are the slices, right? Now, what do you mean by this? Create async thunk. What is a thunk? Thunk is that function where we write the asynchronous code. Where we write what? Asynchronous code. In this case, we tried to fetch the data. Fetch is a JavaScript's built-in functionality which will communicate with the server and pull the data, right? So we have seen what do you mean by UI? A dispatch. Dispatch functions are dispatching the actions. Middleware is the thunk. Store is the state. Reducer are the functions which gives you the new state. So we have implemented core architecture as well as we have implemented the advanced middleware architecture. I hope you have understood the Redux. See team, I also have not understood Redux in the first go. I have seen a lot of YouTube videos, I have read a lot of blogs, and the official documentation is the thing that I really refer all the time. So Redux is not that thing which you will understand in the first go, which doesn't mean that you would be giving up. Stick to what you can say, your trust on yourself and stick to your practice. Also, practice makes man perfect is a partial truth. Repetitive practice generates the correctness in you, and the correct practice makes man perfect. I hope you have enjoyed this session. I hope you have learned from this session. And I hope you have stayed till this point with me. I am really thankful for you. Thank you and good night. Now need to sleep. Thank you.